So, as we're engaging with one another, it's going to happen on a very obvious level that you hear the words that I say and you think about what they mean. But there are all these other levels of engagement that I'd like you to just allow yourself to be aware of as we go into the idea of pain and suffering. Allow yourself to really get a sense of what you could get out of this. You're watching this because you have this idea that you're suffering in some area of your life. So, how much are you willing for just being here now to change all of that? The other thing I want to invite you to is to just breathe easily, deeply, and openly. You don't have to put a ton of effort into this. Just allow it to happen and allow yourself to remind yourself to keep doing that, being that throughout the course of our time together. So, what is suffering? Not a very fun question, is it? But really be willing to look and inquire and question in a way maybe you never have before. Be willing to be curious. What is suffering? Do you get the sense already that whatever you've been suffering with is different just by asking that question? What is suffering? What is pain? It's very strange, but that alone opens the door to unlocking the freedom that you already have. This is why I said be open to receiving this on more than just the level of hearing what I say and understanding it. Because some of the things that I say may not make any sense to you. And I don't want you to accept something just because I say it. I want you to engage with what you know and the ability to heal that you have. So, again, what is suffering? And what is going on in your life that you associate with suffering, that you call suffering, that you think is painful, that you think is maybe even miserable? What have you decided you are suffering with right now? And let's really, really, really peel back how you are creating that. And it's hard for a lot of us to even admit that we're creating it because we have such a judgment of what we're creating. And we think that admitting that we're creating it makes us somehow responsible. And our associations with responsibility are not always the kindest. We have this very heavy punishment based idea of taking responsibility. So, as best you can, suspend all of that right now. Let go of any need to judge yourself, to punish yourself, to blame yourself for anything you have ever created. And let's go through the layers of how you have created whatever feels or appears to be painful to you. And I want to say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not licensed in any way to treat or diagnose any kind of illness or disorder or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this. So again, don't go with anything I say. Let yourself be aware of what you know and what you need to free yourself up in the ways you want to be free. That's not up to me. That's up to you. So we identify ourselves as a person with a name and a body and a mind. And that is what we spend most of our time thinking that we are. And we spend most of our time engaging with things as if that is all we are. But you are far more than that. You're far greater than that. You are so much more than that, it can't even be spoken to. But it certainly is fun to try to speak to it. But you are more than you could ever possibly imagine, than you could ever possibly think about, than you could ever possibly feel. You are this energy, this awareness that contains everything. Everything that exists within your consciousness and your awareness. And if you are not aware of it, and when I say you, I don't necessarily mean you with a name and a body. I mean you, the awareness, you, the creative energy, you, the creator. And if your mind has a real difficulty accepting that, or it runs counter to everything you've ever been told about everything, that's okay. What can you get out of this? But let's just say you are this infinite energy that's creating everything. And prior to the creation of your body, prior to the creation of your identity, prior to the creation of your mind, you would almost, in a sense, just be a blank canvas. So you create a body and a world to occupy and other people to have fun with and to have drama with and to have conflict with, create all these different things. Because without them, you might be just the energy, just the awareness with no form. And do you get the sense that whether you actually believe that or accept that or think that that is true, that just engaging with that as a concept, just playing around with the idea starts to wiggle loose this very solid, very painful space in your head that you've been calling pain and suffering. If you were to really look and go, what if I was this infinite, creative, ever present, immortal awareness and energy that didn't have form, that didn't have identity, that didn't have a body, that was just the energy that everything is composed of? If I was that, and it was ever boring for me to be just that, and I could then go, I'm going to create this whole world I get to experience. I'm going to create this body that I get to be, this identity that I get to pretend that I am. I'm going to create all these different things that I get to experience. And there's an infinite combination. There are infinite permutations. There are infinite possibilities of how that might manifest, what you might create. Every person that you encounter creates a different life. Now, a lot of people seem to create a life that is very similar to the people who raised them, the culture they grew up in, the society they're a part of. Many of us create by looking at what other people are creating and going, that sounds like a good idea. But if you really zoom out, in a sense, did you create all of these people with all of this circumstance? Not as you, the body and the mind and the identity, but you as this energy. And whether you can entertain that idea or not, I think it's certainly a little bit easier to go, okay, I can see where I at least create who I let into my life and who I shove out, who I hang out with and who I run away from, to at least some extent. We're willing to admit, okay, yeah. And things like the law of attraction are very appealing to us because they give us a little bit of choice. As long as we write down the affirmations or we do the self image and the self concept correctly. And as long, I saw a video today that was like how to pray correctly so that you get what you're praying for. And I was kind of like, hmm, if I'm praying to God, shouldn't God be telling me how to pray correctly, not some person on Instagram with a $25 coin? It's very strange. And I created that. So you create this experience for yourself to have. And you create this experience for yourself to have so that you can appreciate a depth and a variety of experiences. Is pain one of the experiences? Because if you're this infinite, boundless, eternal energy that has no positive or negative thoughts, that has no positive or negative feelings, that has just an infinite canvas to just be without a body, without a mind, without any needs. wouldn't it be interesting to create the idea that anything could ever hurt you? Wouldn't it be interesting to create the idea that anything could ever be wrong with you? Wouldn't it be interesting to create situations that are so compelling that you can forget how infinite you are? Really appreciate that in this moment as much as you're willing to. Even if you think it's total nonsense, just see what, wow, yeah, if I was, let's just say if I was this infinite eternal energy that's infinitely creative and can create anything and has no limitations and has no boundaries and has no barriers and has no need to be doing any of this. Wouldn't it be interesting if I could create an experience for myself that was so profound and so captivating and so gripping that I could believe that I am bad, that I could believe that I am poor, that I could believe that there's anything missing from me, there's anything about me. Wouldn't it be amazing if you were underneath it all, creating everything? If you could convince yourself that it was all completely and entirely out of your control and you were just a cog in the machine, you were just trapped, you were just unable to do anything about your situation. When behind the scenes, you are the one architecting everything, choosing everything, creating everything down to the last detail. What isn't that just interesting, even if it's not true? So, what is pain? What is creating pain giving you? There are a lot of people who do a lot of different modalities, a lot of different threads of spirituality or religion or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different people who have a practice, and myself included, who, you know, on a good day, when everything's working, it's fun to sit and ponder the nature of existence. It's fun to sit and do that. And on a bad day, it hurts to do that because you go, okay, if the universe is supporting me, why am I in pain all the time? If I have a higher self, why am I in pain all the time? If any of this stuff that I've learned is actually true, why is there still something wrong with me? And that's what's really, really amazing is that you can pursue the height of spirituality. But if you refuse to see yourself in it, and when I say see yourself, I don't mean your identity. When you really refuse to see yourself as intrinsic to everything, it's really easy if, you know, $5,000 shows up in the mail to go, wow, I created that. But if something you don't want happens, you go, how did this happen? Who is creating it all? And again, it is quite difficult at times if you're creating something that feels like a lot of suffering. It is difficult to let yourself admit that. What if you could just admit it now? And even if you don't want to admit it, what if you could get what's here? This moment right now has something for you in it. Doesn't mean you need to agree with me. You don't need to agree with anybody. But how much are you aware of something and you're fighting with yourself about whether or not you should have that and whether or not you can have that? What are you holding on to that if you would just let that go, suddenly things would open up in that way you keep telling yourself they can't possibly open up? What are you holding on to that if you just let that go, you would let yourself be what you know you are? In this moment, just let yourself be what you actually know you are, instead of trying to be as small as you've judged yourself to be. No matter how finite you try to make yourself, you're never going to be finite. No matter how small you try to believe you are, that's never going to be the truth about you. But you are incredibly skilled at making a very, 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 very compelling game of pretend for yourself that you are anything less than infinite. What if you could just be infinite? There's this interesting thing in the collective unconscious, if you want to call it that, that there is no existence without pain and suffering, that pain and suffering are an irremovable part of existence. As soon as I articulate that, you know it's not true. But how much do you see that everywhere you look? And just as a reminder, everywhere you look is in your consciousness and your awareness. So, how much have you been laboring under the delusion that pain and suffering are just inherent to having the human experience or any kind of experience? And what if you would admit that they're not? What if you would admit that you could exist without pain? See, most people play this game of life like The objectives are avoid pain and seek out pleasure. And if you're getting more pleasurable experiences than you are having painful experiences, then you're winning. And if you're having more painful experiences than you are pleasurable experiences, you're losing. Obviously, there are some people who think that suffering is like really noble. So maybe from their perspective, suffering more is winning. But most people seem to think that having more positive and less negative is winning, and having more negative and less positive is losing. Do you see how you write the rules of that game for yourself? Because you and I probably have different ideas of what would be a pleasurable experience and what would be a painful experience. Some of them are overlap, obviously. I don't have any desire to get hit by a bus or injured in any way. But there are other things that people might enjoy that I don't have any interest in. And there are things that I would enjoy that you don't have any interest in. That's kind of irrelevant. You have these rules that you don't even really let yourself see clearly that you're operating by. But what if the game of life could be bigger than that, easier than that, more fun than that? A lot of people look at this game of life like it's life or death. Are you willing to have something entirely different now? And again, I'm very aware that on the intellectual level, some of it just sounds like rambling. But if you're willing to have the energy underneath it, if you're willing to really fundamentally change your experience inside and out to something that you've always knew was available, knew was there, knew had to be possible, but somehow you can't ever get there. I'm going to give you a big hint. You've been pretending you can't get there. You know you can get there, and you know that getting there is way easier than you've been pretending really hard that you can't go where you want to go. If you would just hear that, you could ignore all of the spiritual mumbo jumbo entirely. If you would just hear, you've been pretending that where you want to go is a lot harder to get to than it actually, you're already there. If you'd really hear that and go, wow, if that was true, how would I be living my life? The rest of this would not really be of any consequence. What if you were free of pain right now? That's baffling. And if you're in physical pain right now, as I'm saying that, that's probably infuriating. I had a really strong headache earlier, and I was working on myself as I often do, and I was just annoying myself, really, because I was doing this thing of like, what if you were just free of pain right now? And going, I know, but I'm not. I know, but I can feel it. And it's so real and it hurts so bad. Isn't that amazing? That you can create that sensation that you can experience. If you can't play around in the garden of maybe you created that, Isn't it just incredible that you can experience that at all, even if you have no idea where it's coming from or how it's being created or why? Isn't it amazing? Isn't it just amazing that you have sensation? Isn't it just amazing that you can feel things? And isn't it just amazing that it's kind of up to you what you do want to feel and what you don't want to feel? Like, you may argue it's not up to you what you feel, but it is up to you how you interpret it. It is up to you how you label it. It is up to you how you define it. That's completely up to you. Isn't it amazing that you have that capacity to feel something that has no definition, that has no meaning, that just arises in awareness and then vanishes? Isn't it amazing that you get to choose? What does that mean to me? What is that? What do I call that? Every time I feel that, what do I call it? Every time I feel that, what do I think about it? Every time I think that, what do I feel? Isn't it amazing that you can make those connections? If you would really just appreciate that, that you have this insanely complex capacity to be sensate, to have sensation. And then you have this incredibly complex capacity to think about things. And then you can weave those two things together into an infinite number of possibility. That's amazing. And how often do you use it to create things that you don't like? How often do you feel something and go, I don't like that. I better create a lot more of it so I can really remind myself how much I don't like that. It's incredible. It's truly amazing. So, if you are experiencing any kind of pain right now, any kind of suffering right now, let yourself breathe easily, deeply, openly. And as best as you can muster, just appreciate that you are having that sensation. If you want to take it a step further and appreciate that you created that experience for yourself, see what that's like. Just what is it like if I created this for myself to experience? I didn't have to judge anymore that I'm experiencing it. I didn't have to go into what it means. I didn't have to project into the future how much longer it's going to be here. I didn't have to have the whole story about it. Didn't have to beat myself up about it. Just what if I'm creating the experience I'm having right now? What if there's nothing wrong with it? And what if I was willing to fully appreciate it? And I have certainly had the experience in the past. I've played around with Ho'oponopono. And I'm sitting there like clutching my head, like, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And like as fast as I can, trying to get rid of what I'm experiencing. Don't cheat yourself of the magic like that by reaching for whatever the remedy is and then just Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Go away now. Go away now. I appreciate you. Go away. Go away. Right? You don't need to do that. That's not really going to that. I mean, you got to laugh, right? That you can create an experience so you can appreciate that experience. And you can create the experience of really not appreciating that experience so it sticks around longer for you to appreciate it because you're saying you appreciate it when really you don't appreciate it. It's just crazy. But really let yourself experience it, whatever it is, and just imagine the creative power and energy it takes to create everything and appreciate that you have that, that you are that, that you're intrinsically connected to that, that you are one with whatever that is for you. Whether you want to call it you or you want to call it something else, is it possible that whatever is creating the experience you're having is creating it for you, in support of you, not, and it's not to teach you a lesson. What if this doesn't have to be about learning your lesson? What if this didn't have to be about responsibility? What if it was purely about having an experience that you get to appreciate? So, thank you so much if you are still with me, and hope to hear from you again soon.